The community center was almost empty that Tuesday evening. Just a few overhead lights were on, making the big room feel even lonelier. In the corner, near the water fountain that never worked properly, sat an old piano. Someone had donated it last week. The wood was scratched, and a few keys looked yellow with age. A man in his early 40s walked in through the main door. His work boots made soft sounds on the floor. He'd been working construction all day, and his hands were still a bit dusty. He looked around to make sure no one else was there. Good. He didn't want anyone watching what he was about to do. He walked slowly toward the piano. His heart was beating faster than usual. Why was he so nervous? It was just a piano. Just an instrument. But somehow it felt like more than that. He pulled out the bench and sat down. The bench wobbled a little. One leg was shorter than the others. He'd have to remember to fix that. Old habits from his construction work, always noticing what needed fixing. Now he sat there, staring at all those black and white keys. 88 of them he'd read online. He had no idea which one to press first. His hands felt too big, too rough for something like this. These were hands that held hammers and drills, not hands that made music. He lifted his right hand and held it over the middle of the keyboard. His finger was shaking slightly. Come on, he thought to himself. Just press one key. That's all. Just one. He pressed down on a white key somewhere in the middle. A single note rang out. Clear and pure. It filled the entire room, bouncing off the walls and coming back to him. He sat very still, letting the sound fade away completely. Then he pressed it again. Same note. Same beautiful sound. Something strange happened in his chest. It felt like something that had been locked up tight was starting to open. Just a crack, but still opening. He pressed the key a third time, and this time he closed his eyes. The note seemed even clearer now. Even more real, you see. His life had become very quiet lately. Too quiet. His daughter had left for college 3 months ago. The house felt empty without her. Her room still had all her posters on the walls, but she wasn't there anymore. And his wife, well, she'd left 6 months before that. The divorce papers had arrived in a brown envelope. He'd signed them at the kitchen table alone. Work was fine. He had good guys on his construction crew. The projects kept coming. But when he came home each evening, the silence in his apartment was so heavy it felt like it had weight. He'd eat dinner watching television shows he didn't really care about. Then he'd go to bed and do it all over again the next day. Last week he'd walked past this community center on his way home. The door was open because they were bringing in the piano. He'd stopped and watched them struggle with it. The piano was heavy and the guys moving it were having trouble. He almost offered to help, but he just stood there watching. That night he couldn't stop thinking about that piano. He'd never played an instrument in his life. His parents couldn't afford music lessons when he was young. Then he grew up, got busy with work and family, and never thought about it again. But something about seeing that piano made him feel something he hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity, maybe, or possibility. Like maybe there was still something new he could try. Something that was just for him. So here he was, pressing one key over and over like it was the most important thing in the world. And maybe in this moment it was. He tried pressing the key next to it. Different sound. Lower. Then he tried the one on the other side, higher. He played those 3 notes in a row. Low, middle, high. Then backwards. High, middle, low. It wasn't music, not really. But it was something. It was a start. The janitor walked by in the hallway. He could see her shadow through the frosted glass of the door. He stopped playing immediately, feeling embarrassed. What was he doing here? A grown man playing with a piano like a little kid, but the janitor didn't come in. She just kept walking, pushing her cleaning cart. The wheels squeaked as she went down the hall. He looked at his watch. He'd been sitting here for almost 20 minutes just pressing a few keys. 20 minutes that felt like 5. Time had moved differently while he was focused on those sounds. He stood up from the wobbly bench. His back was a bit stiff from sitting. Tomorrow was Wednesday, and he had an early job starting at 7 in the morning. He needed to get home, eat something, and sleep. But as he walked toward the door, he turned back to look at the piano one more time. It sat there in the dim light, waiting. Patient, not judging him for being a beginner. Not caring that he didn't know what he was doing. He made a decision right there. He'd come back. Maybe Thursday. Yeah, Thursday evening after work. He'd come back and press some more keys. Maybe he'd even look up some videos online about how to actually play this thing. The idea made him feel something he hadn't felt in months. Not happiness exactly, but something close to it. Something like hope, but smaller, quieter, more careful. He walked out into the evening air. The street lights were coming on. Cars were driving past. People were heading home from work just like him. But he felt just a tiny bit different than he had this morning. Like something small had changed inside him. That single note, that one pure sound. It was still echoing in his mind as he walked down the street toward his empty apartment. And for the first time in a long time, the emptiness waiting for him there didn't feel quite so heavy. He thought about his daughter at college, probably studying in the library right now. He thought about his ex-wife living her new life across town. He thought about all the years that had passed, all the things he'd never tried, all the dreams he'd put aside because life got busy. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe you could start something new at 42. Maybe one note could lead to another note and then another. Maybe that's how all journeys begin, with just one small step, one single note in a quiet room. He smiled to himself as he walked. Just a little smile. But it was real, and that was enough for today. Thursday came and he kept his promise to himself. After work, instead of going straight home, he drove to the community center. His truck smelled like sawdust and paint. His lunchbox rattled in the passenger seat as he turned into the parking lot. The same nervous feeling came back as he walked through the door. What if someone else was using the piano? What if people were there and they'd watch him? But the room was empty again, just like Tuesday. The piano sat there waiting like an old friend. He'd done something that afternoon during his lunch break. He'd sat in his truck and pulled out his phone. He'd searched on the internet for beginner piano lessons. There were thousands of videos. Millions, probably. He'd watched one while eating his sandwich. A woman with a kind voice explained about middle C. That was the note he'd been pressing. Middle C, now it had a name. He sat down at the wobbly bench and found middle C again. Then he followed what the video had shown him. He placed his thumb on middle C and his other fingers on the next 4 white keys. This was called C position, the video lady had said. He pressed each finger down slowly. C, D, E, F, G, 5 notes. They sounded good together, like they belonged as a family. He did it again. And again. His pinky finger on his right hand kept wanting to curl up instead of staying curved. The video lady had said to keep your fingers curved like you're holding a small ball. But his pinky had other ideas. 30 minutes passed. Then 45. He practiced putting his fingers on the right keys without looking. Then he tried a simple pattern the video showed. Thumb, middle finger, pinky. C, E, G together. They made something that sounded almost like music. A chord, it was called. The door opened and his hands jumped off the keys. The janitor came in, pushing her cart. She was an older lady, maybe in her 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a bun. She wore the community center uniform and comfortable shoes. "Don't stop," she said in a voice that had an accent he couldn't quite place. "I heard you from the hallway." His face got hot. "I'm not very good." "Just started." She smiled and began dusting the chairs nearby. "Everyone starts somewhere. I heard you Tuesday too. You came back." "That's good. You don't mind the noise?" he asked. She laughed. "Noise? That's not noise. You should hear the youth group when they're here. That's noise. This is nice." She went about her cleaning and slowly he put his hands back on the keys. It felt strange playing while someone else was in the room. But she wasn't really watching. She was just working and he was just practicing. After a few minutes it felt normal. This became his routine. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, 7 o'clock to 8:30, sometimes 9 if no one needed to lock up. He'd come straight from work, still in his construction clothes, and practice whatever the videos taught him that week. The second week, he learned a simple song. Well, simple for people who knew how to play. For him, it felt like climbing a mountain. 5 notes played one after the other, over and over with small changes. It took him 3 days to get through it without stopping. His fingers kept hitting wrong keys. The timing was off. But slowly, very slowly, it started to sound like something. The third week he learned, "Mary Had a Little Lamb." He felt silly, a grown man playing a children's song. But when he got through it the first time without a mistake, he felt proud. Actually proud. He texted his daughter that night. "Learned a song on piano today," she responded an hour later. "What, since when do you play piano?" "Since 3 weeks ago," he typed back. "That's awesome, Dad." "Can you send me a video?" He wasn't ready for that, not yet. Maybe when I'm better, he replied. Week 4, week 5, week 6. Each Tuesday and Thursday he showed up. Some evenings his hands hurt from work. One Thursday he'd cut his finger earlier that day and it was bandaged. He practiced with 9 fingers instead of 10. The janitor, he learned her name was Mrs. Chen, started timing her cleaning to when he practiced. She'd empty the trash bins, wipe down the tables, and sweep the floor while he played. Sometimes she'd hum along if she recognized the song. You're getting better, she told him one evening. This was week 7. Really? He didn't feel much better. He still made mistakes constantly. Oh yes, much better. When you started, every note was separate. Now they flow a little. You can hear it. He'd never thought about it that way. But maybe she was right. Maybe he was getting a tiny bit better. So slowly he couldn't notice it himself. Week 8 came around. He'd been practicing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star all week from a video tutorial. It was harder than it looked. The left hand had to play different notes than the right hand. His brain felt like it was splitting in half trying to tell each hand what to do. But on Thursday of that week, something clicked. He sat down, put his hands in position, and played it all the way through. Both hands. Right notes. Right timing. When he finished, he just sat there staring at the keys. He'd done it. He'd actually played a real song with both hands. Mrs. Chen was wiping down the windows across the room. She turned around and clapped her hands together 3 times. Beautiful. See, I told you. Much better. He felt his face break into a huge smile. A real smile that came from somewhere deep inside. When was the last time he'd smiled like this? He couldn't remember. Months at least. Maybe longer. He played it again just to prove to himself it wasn't a fluke. And it worked again. Sure, it wasn't perfect. Sure, a real piano player would probably laugh at how simple it was. But he didn't care. He'd learned something new. He'd worked at it for weeks and now he could do it. That night, driving home, he actually felt happy. Not just okay. Not just getting through the day. Actually happy. The radio in his truck was playing some country song, and he turned it up and sang along even though he didn't really know all the words. When he got home to his apartment, it didn't feel quite as empty as usual. He heated up some leftover pasta and ate it while looking at his phone, searching for what song to learn next. There were so many possibilities. So many songs in the world, and slowly, one by one, he could learn them. He called his daughter before bed. She sounded surprised but happy to hear from him. They usually just texted, "Hey sweetie, how's school?" They talked for 20 minutes. About her classes, her roommate, the weather there. Normal stuff, easy stuff. And before they hung up, he said, "I played Twinkle Twinkle Little Star tonight." Both hands. She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "Dad, that's really cool. I'm proud of you." His eyes got a bit wet. He blamed it on being tired. "Thanks, honey. That means a lot." After they said goodbye, he sat on his couch in the quiet apartment. But it was a different kind of quiet now. Not the heavy, sad quiet from 2 months ago. This was a peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet where you're tired from doing something that matters, even if it's small. He thought about Tuesday. About going back to the piano. About learning the next song. About getting a little bit better each time. His hands, rough and calloused from years of construction work, rested on his lap. These hands had built things. Houses, decks, additions, repairs. They'd created things that people lived in and used. Now these same hands were learning to create something different. Something that couldn't be touched or lived in but could be felt anyway. Music. Simple music, yes. Beginner music. But music nonetheless. He was tired. Tomorrow was Friday, thank goodness. But it was a good tired. The kind of tired that comes from working toward something, from trying something new, from taking a chance on yourself when it would be easier to just go home and watch TV. As he got ready for bed, he caught himself humming. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. And he smiled again, that same real smile from earlier. Maybe, he thought as he turned off the light, maybe this is what hope feels like. Not the big dramatic kind from movies, but the quiet, steady kind that grows slowly, one note at a time. It was a Tuesday evening in November. The weather had turned cold, and rain was falling steadily outside. The kind of rain that makes you want to stay home under a blanket, but he'd made a commitment to himself. Tuesday and Thursday. No matter what. He parked his truck and ran through the rain to the community center door. His jacket got pretty wet in those few seconds. Inside, he shook off the water and walked toward the piano room. That's when he noticed her. A teenage girl, maybe 15 or 16, sitting on one of the plastic chairs in the corner. She had earbuds in and was staring at her phone. Her backpack was on the floor next to her, and she looked like she was trying to disappear into the wall. She glanced up when he walked in. Their eyes met for a second, and then she quickly looked back at her phone. She seemed tense, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to be there. He didn't say anything. Just nodded once in her direction and walked to the piano. Maybe she was waiting for someone. Maybe she just needed to be inside somewhere dry. Either way, it wasn't his business. He sat down at the wobbly bench and arranged his phone against the music stand. He'd queued up the practice video he needed for today. Basic scales. C major scale up and down 5 times with each hand. It wasn't exciting, but the video teacher said scales were like vegetables. Not fun, but good for you. He started playing. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, then back down. His left hand still struggled with it. The coordination wasn't natural yet. He had to think about each finger, each note. After about 10 minutes, he happened to glance toward the corner. The girl had taken out her earbuds. She was still looking at her phone, but her head was slightly tilted toward him. She was listening. He felt self-conscious again, like that first time when Mrs. Chen had been there. But he kept playing. He moved on to the simple song he'd been working on. A basic version of Ode to Joy. Just the main melody, nothing fancy. His fingers fumbled on the 4th measure like they always did. He stopped, started again from the beginning. "That's pretty bad," a voice said. He looked up. The girl was looking right at him now, no longer pretending to focus on her phone. For a second, he didn't know what to say. Then he surprised himself by laughing. A real laugh. "Yeah," he said. "It really is." Something about admitting it out loud felt good. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was just a beginner, and that was okay. The girl put her phone down completely. "How long have you been playing?" "About 2 months," he said. What gave it away? The terrible timing or the wrong notes? She almost smiled. Almost. Both. He turned back to the piano. "Well, I'm going to keep practicing my terrible playing if that's okay with you. Feel free to put your earbuds back in if it's annoying." "It's not annoying," she said quietly. Then she added, "It's better than listening to the rain." He played through Ode to Joy 3 more times. Each time was slightly better than the last. On the 4th attempt, he actually got through the tricky part without stopping. Small victory. "There we go," he said to himself. "That was better," the girl said from her corner. "Thanks." He paused, then asked, "You waiting for someone?" She shrugged. "Just hanging out until later." He didn't push it. He remembered being a teenager. Sometimes you just needed to be somewhere that wasn't home. He went back to his practice, working through the easier song he'd learned last week. "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." "I know that one," she said suddenly. "I had to play it for like 6 months when I was in 3rd grade. My mom made me take piano lessons." "You played piano?" he asked. "For 2 years. Then we moved and couldn't afford the lessons anymore." She picked at a thread on her jeans. "I wasn't very good anyway." "I bet you were better than me," he said. "That's not a high bar," she replied. But this time she definitely smiled a little. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. He practiced. She scrolled on her phone. Mrs. Chen came in around 7:30 with her cleaning cart. "Oh, we have 2 people tonight," Mrs. Chen said cheerfully. "Very nice." The girl looked nervous, like she thought she might get kicked out. But Mrs. Chen just smiled at her and went about her cleaning routine. She started humming along when he played Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. At 8 o'clock, the girl stood up and grabbed her backpack. "I should go. Stay safe out there," he said. "Rain's still coming down pretty hard." She walked to the door, then turned back. "What you're doing is cool. Learning something new, I mean. Most adults don't try new things." Before he could respond, she was gone. Out into the rainy night, Mrs. Chen was wiping down the tables nearby. "Nice girl," she said. "I've seen her here a few times before. I think things are not easy at home." He nodded slowly. He'd suspected something like that. The way she'd been sitting in the corner trying to be invisible, killing time before she had to go back to wherever she lived. "She can come here any time," Mrs. Chen said. "The center is for everyone." The next Thursday, he almost didn't go. He'd had a long day at work. There was a problem with the electrical at the site, and everything took twice as long as it should have. He was tired and hungry and his back hurt, but he went anyway. Because he'd promised himself. Tuesday and Thursday. No excuses. When he walked in, the girl was there again. Same corner, same position, earbuds in. But when she saw him, she took the earbuds out immediately. "You came back," she said. "I come every Tuesday and Thursday," he replied. "Rain or shine, tired or not." "That's pretty dedicated for someone who's, quote, pretty bad," she said. He laughed and sat at the piano. The only way to stop being bad is to keep showing up. He started his practice routine. Scales first, then the songs he was working on. He'd added a new one this week, a simple version of Amazing Grace. It was harder than what he'd done before. The jumps between notes were bigger. His hands had to stretch more. He messed up constantly. Started over. Messed up again. It was frustrating, but he kept at it. "You messed up that same part 3 times, the girl observed. "I know. My fingers don't want to make that jump. See, from here to here." He showed her the keys. "My pinky doesn't stretch that far naturally." "Try using your thumb," she said. "Cross it under." That's what my piano teacher always said. He tried it her way. It worked better. Not perfect, but better. "Hey, that helps, thanks." She looked pleased, like she'd contributed something valuable. Over the next few weeks, this became a pattern. Most Tuesday and Thursday evenings, the girl was there. He learned her name eventually. She'd mention it casually one evening like it was no big deal. She'd sit in her corner and he'd practice. Sometimes she'd offer suggestions. Small things she remembered from her childhood lessons. "Play it slower first. Speed comes later. You're tensing up your shoulders." My teacher always said to relax. That rhythm is off. It should be more like dum-da-da-dum, not dum-dum-da-da. He realized she was actually pretty knowledgeable. Those 2 years of lessons had stuck with her more than she thought. One evening in late November, after he finished practicing, she asked, "Can I try?" "The piano?" "Of course, please." She came over hesitantly and sat on the bench. Her hands found the keys like they remembered them. She played a simple piece, something from a beginner's book probably, but she played it smoothly, confidently, so much better than he could play anything. When she finished, he clapped. "See, you are good." That was really nice. She shrugged, but he could tell she was pleased. "I'm rusty. I used to be better." "You should come practice when I'm not here," he said. "I'm sure Mrs. Chen wouldn't mind. The piano just sits here most of the time anyway." She looked at him like he'd offered her something precious. "Really? You think that would be okay?" "I know it would be. This place is for the community. You're part of the community." From that evening on, she started coming more often. Not just when he was there, but other times too. Sometimes he'd arrive for his Tuesday practice and find her already there, playing through old pieces she was trying to remember. They'd gotten to know each other a bit. She lived with her mom and her mom's boyfriend. The boyfriend wasn't very nice. That's why she came to the community center. It was quiet here, safe. She could just be herself without anyone yelling or making her feel small. He understood that. In his own way, this place had become a refuge for him too. A place where he was learning something new, where he could focus on growth instead of loss, where the empty apartment wasn't waiting for him quite yet. One Thursday evening, after they'd both practiced, they sat talking. She asked him why he'd started learning piano. He thought about it for a minute. "I guess I needed something that was just mine. Something new, a reason to show up somewhere besides work and home." She nodded like that made perfect sense. "That's why I like coming here. It feels like mine too." Mrs. Chen was finishing up her cleaning. She looked over at them and smiled. "Piano brought you both here. Music has a way of doing that, bringing people together." He looked at this teenager who'd become his unexpected piano companion, a kid who'd been hiding in a corner just a few weeks ago, and now she was opening up, playing music, smiling sometimes. And he thought about himself. A divorced guy in his 40s who'd been going through the motions of life, who'd taken a chance on one note, then another, then another. "Yeah," he said, "I guess it does bring people together." As they left that evening, walking out into the cold November night, he realized something. He'd started playing piano for himself, to fill the silence. December came with its cold winds and early darkness. The community center put up a small Christmas tree in the lobby, and someone strung lights along the windows. The piano room felt cozier now, more welcoming somehow. He kept his routine. Tuesday and Thursday, 7 o'clock. By now he'd been playing for almost 4 months. His fingers moved more naturally across the keys. He could play several simple songs without looking at his hands the whole time. The video tutorials he watched were getting more advanced. He was learning about things like dynamics and phrasing, big words that just meant making the music sound more like music and less like a robot playing notes. The teenage girl came regularly now, too. Sometimes she'd be there when he arrived, already practicing. Other times she'd show up halfway through his session. They'd developed an easy friendship. She'd tease him about his mistakes, and he'd challenge her to remember pieces from her childhood lessons. Mrs. Chen would clean around them, occasionally humming along or offering encouragement. But something new started happening in mid-December. Other people began showing up. It started with two older men, probably in their 70s. They came in one Thursday evening carrying a worn chessboard. They nodded at him and settled at a table in the far corner. They set up their chess pieces and began to play. He felt a bit self-conscious at first. More people meant more witnesses to his mistakes. But after a few minutes, he realized they weren't really paying attention to him. They were focused on their game, talking quietly, moving pieces. His piano playing was just background noise to them. Pleasant background noise, apparently, because they came back the next Tuesday. Then a young mother started showing up. She had a toddler, maybe 2 years old, with curly hair and bright eyes. The first time they came, she looked apologetic. "I'm sorry, is it okay if we're here? My son saw the piano through the window and wanted to come in. He loves music." "Of course it's okay," he said. "Stay as long as you like." The little boy was fascinated by the piano. He'd stand next to the bench watching with wide eyes. When the man played something upbeat, the toddler would bounce and dance, his little body moving to the rhythm. His mother would laugh, and even the chess players would look up and smile. "Again," the little boy would demand when a song ended. "Again!" So he'd play it again, and the boy would dance again. Pure joy on his small face. The girl thought it was hilarious. "You've got a fan," she said. Better not mess up. But of course he did mess up constantly. And the little boy didn't care at all. He danced whether the notes were right or wrong. Kids didn't judge. They just enjoyed. By the third week of December, the piano room had transformed into something unexpected. It wasn't just him practicing alone anymore. It was becoming a gathering space. The chess players, whose names were Frank and George, came every Tuesday and Thursday now. They'd been friends for 50 years, they told him. Since high school, chess was their thing. They'd played thousands of games against each other over the decades. "Your playing is getting better," Frank said one evening. "When we first came, you were hitting a lot of wrong notes. Now it actually sounds like songs." He felt proud of that. 4 months ago, he couldn't play anything. Now he could work through simple classical pieces, basic hymns, childhood songs. He'd even started learning a simplified version of Für Elise. It was challenging. Really challenging. But he could play the first section now. Sort of. The young mother's name was Beth. She was a single mom working 2 jobs. The community center was free and warm, and her son could run around safely while she took a breather. She started bringing a book to read while he practiced, and her son played with toys she'd bring in her bag. "This is my quiet time," she told him once. "Work is crazy, home is crazy. But here with you playing piano and my son happy, I can just breathe for an hour." He understood that completely. This place had become his breathing space too. More people trickled in as the weeks went on. An elderly woman who'd sit and knit while he played. A middle-aged man who'd work on his laptop at one of the tables, apparently finding the piano music helpful for concentration. A few teenagers who knew the girl from school started dropping by occasionally. Mrs. Chen noticed the change too. "Look at this," she said one evening, gesturing around the room. "Piano made this happen." "You made this happen." He shook his head. "I'm just practicing." "They're just looking for a place to be." "Exactly," Mrs. Chen said. "Everyone needs a place to be. You gave them a reason to be here." He'd never thought of it that way. He was just showing up for himself, trying to learn something new. But somehow his presence, his music, had created a space where others felt welcome too. One Tuesday evening in early January, he made a decision. He'd been practicing Für Elise for weeks now. It was still rough, but he could get through the famous first section without stopping. He took out his phone and propped it up. He hit record. His hand shook a little as he played. Knowing the camera was watching made it harder. He made 2 mistakes, but he kept going. When he finished, he stopped the recording and watched it back. It wasn't perfect, not even close, but it was recognizable. It was actually music. He sent it to his daughter without thinking too hard about it. If he thought about it, he'd chicken out. She replied 20 minutes later, "Dad, that's amazing." "How did you learn that?" "Practice. Lots and lots of practice. I'm seriously impressed. Can you play it when I come home for spring break?" His eyes got blurry reading that message. "I'll have it even better by then, promise." "Already proud of you now," she wrote back. He sat there at the piano staring at his phone screen. His daughter was proud of him. When was the last time he'd given her a reason to feel that way? He'd been such a mess after the divorce. Withdrawn, going through the motions. She'd been away at college building her new life and he'd been stuck, but not anymore. He was building something too. Something small but real. The chess players finished their game. "Good match," George said to Frank. "You're getting better at the end game." "We've only been playing for 50 years, Frank replied. "About time I figured out the end game," they both laughed. They packed up their board and stood to leave. "Same time Thursday?" George asked. "Wouldn't miss it," Frank said. Then he turned to the man at the piano. "We'll be here Thursday. Don't let us down." "I'll be here," he promised. After everyone left and Mrs. Chen locked up, he sat in his truck for a few minutes before starting the engine. The parking lot was dark and cold. But inside the community center, the lights were still glowing through the windows. 4 months ago, he'd walked through those doors for the first time. Nervous, alone, not sure what he was doing. He'd pressed one key, middle C. One single note that had started everything. Now look at what that one note had become, a routine that gave his week structure, a skill that was slowly, steadily improving, a friendship with a teenage girl who needed a safe space, a gathering place for chess players and young mothers and anyone else who needed somewhere to be. The little toddler dancing to his music, Mrs. Chen humming along while she cleaned. Frank and George playing chess to his piano soundtrack. The girl remembering her own piano lessons and finding joy in music again. All of it connected to that first note. That first Tuesday evening when he'd been brave enough to try something new. He thought about the empty apartment waiting for him. It didn't feel quite so empty anymore, because now he had purpose. He had progress. He had people expecting him to show up on Tuesday and Thursday, and he had his daughter's message on his phone. "Already proud of you now," he saved that message. He'd read it again when things got hard, when his fingers hurt from work and he was too tired to practice, when he hit the same wrong note for the 20th time and wanted to give up. He'd read that message and remember why he was doing this, not just to learn piano, but to show himself, and his daughter, and maybe that teenage girl too, that it's never too late to start something new, that growth doesn't stop at any particular age, that showing up consistently, even when it's hard, even when you're not very good, creates something valuable. He started the truck and drove home through the January night. The radio was playing some pop song he didn't know, but in his head he was hearing For Elise, his version with its imperfect timing and occasional wrong notes. But his version nonetheless. One note had led to another. One Tuesday had led to dozens. One person at a piano had created a community, and tomorrow was Wednesday, which meant the day after was Thursday, which meant he'd be back at that piano, practicing, improving, and simply showing up for himself. For his daughter, for the people who'd started gathering in that piano room, for all the notes still waiting to be played. February arrived with its gray skies and cold that seemed to seep into your bones. He'd been playing piano for 5 months now. 5 months of Tuesday and Thursday evenings. 5 months of scales, songs, mistakes, and small victories. He could play quite a few pieces now. Für Elise was getting smoother. He'd learned Canon in D, at least a simplified version. He was working on Clair de Lune, which was way harder than anything he'd attempted before. His fingers still fumbled over the complicated parts, but he could play the opening section pretty well. The piano room had become a regular gathering spot now. Frank and George with their chessboard, Beth and her toddler, the elderly woman with her knitting, a few others who'd drop by from time to time, and of course the teenage girl who'd become something like a piano buddy to him. One Thursday evening in mid-February, she came in with a different energy, excited about something. She had her phone in her hand and that look young people get when they've had an idea. "Okay, hear me out," she said before he'd even sat down at the piano. "I'm listening. You should live stream your practice sessions." He stared at her. "What? No, absolutely not. Why not? People live stream everything now. Gaming, cooking, just talking. Why not piano practice?" "Because I'm not good enough. I make mistakes constantly." Who wants to watch that? She sat down across from him with that determined look teenagers get when they've decided something. That's exactly why people would watch. Everyone online is showing their perfect selves. Perfect lives, perfect skills, perfect everything. You'd be showing something real. Someone actually learning, making mistakes and keeping going. I don't know, he said, feeling uncomfortable with the whole idea. Look, nobody might watch. Probably nobody will watch. But what's the harm? I'll set it up right now. You just practice like normal. Forget the camera's even there. Before he could protest more, she'd pulled out her phone and was stacking some books on the table next to the piano. She propped her phone on top, angling it toward the piano in his hands. There, perfect angle. Shows the keys in your hands but not your face if you don't want. I really don't think this is a good idea. Just try it once. If you hate it, we'll never do it again. Frank and George had arrived and were setting up their chessboard. What are you kids doing? Frank asked. Setting up a live stream, the girl said proudly. A what now? George asked. It's like TV, but on the internet. People can watch him practice piano in real time. Frank shrugged. Sounds fine to me. We could use some fame in our old age. Make sure you get the chessboard in the shot. Everyone laughed. The girl fiddled with her phone for a minute, typing things, tapping buttons. Okay, it's live. Just start playing. His stomach felt nervous. People could be watching. Strangers. Judging his playing. Counting his mistakes. How many people are watching? She looked at her phone. Right now? 0. But that could change. Just play like you always do, so he did. He started with his warm-up scales. Then moved into Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, which was so easy for him now that he used it just to get his fingers moving. Then he worked on Clair de Lune. This was the piece that was really challenging him. The timing was tricky. The notes jumped around in ways that didn't feel natural. He'd been working on just the first page for 2 weeks now. He messed up in the same spot he always messed up. Stopped. Started again from a few measures back. Messed up again. His frustration must have shown because the girl spoke up. 12 people watching now. His hands jumped off the keys. What, 12 people? Yika and someone commented. They said, keep going, you've got this. He felt weird knowing people were actually watching, but also strangely encouraged. Someone out there, some stranger, was rooting for him. He went back to that difficult section of Clair de Lune, played it slow, very slow, taking each note carefully. It worked better at that tempo. Not perfect, but better. 15 people now, the girl reported. Someone said, this is so wholesome. Another person said they played piano as a kid and this is inspiring them to start again. He looked up at that. Really? Really? You're inspiring people, dude. He practiced for his usual hour and a half. Sometimes he'd forget the camera was there and just focus on the music. Other times he'd remember and feel self-conscious. But mostly it felt like his normal practice session. Just him, the piano, the mistakes, the small victories. When he finished, the girl showed him her phone. 23 people had watched at the peak. The comments were mostly encouraging. A few people offered tips. One person pointed out a better fingering for a tricky section. Another person requested he try River Flows in You next time, see? The girl said. People liked it. You should do this every time you practice, and I don't know. It feels weird. But the next Tuesday she convinced him to do it again, and this time 35 people watched. By the third live stream on Thursday it was 50 people. The numbers kept growing slowly. Someone created a username just to follow his streams. Piano Journey 42 commented every single time, always encouraging, always positive. Other regular viewers started showing up too. He began to recognize their usernames. Musical Mom, Retired Teacher, Learning 2, Night Owl Keys. These strangers from who knows where started feeling like a community. They'd cheer when he finally nailed a difficult section. They'd offer gentle advice. They'd share their own piano struggles. Some of them were beginners too, learning alongside him. Others were experienced players who remembered what it was like to start out. You missed that chord but recovered well, someone would comment. Your timing is improving so much. Another would write, can you play that section again slower? I'm trying to learn it too. By March, his Tuesday and Thursday streams regularly got 100 viewers, sometimes more. The comment section during his practice was active, with people chatting with each other, discussing piano techniques, sharing their own learning journeys. The girl set up a simple page for him where people could find his stream schedule. Tuesday and Thursday, 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. EST. Beginner piano practice sessions. All skill levels welcome. One Tuesday evening, something special happened. He'd been working on Clair de Lune for 6 weeks now. 6 frustrating weeks of the same section over and over. His fingers would tangle up. The timing would fall apart. It felt impossible. But this Tuesday something clicked. Maybe his brain had finally figured out the pattern. Maybe his fingers had built up the muscle memory. Whatever the reason, he played through the entire first page without a major mistake. When he finished, he just sat there in shock. The comment section exploded. Yes, you did it. That was beautiful. I've been watching you struggle with this for weeks. I knew you'd get it. Actually crying right now. So proud of you. The girl was grinning at him. Frank and George had stopped their chess game to watch. Mrs. Chen was standing in the doorway, hands clasped together. Play it again, someone commented. We need to hear it again. So he did, and it worked again, 2 times in a row. The first page of Clair de Lune played all the way through. He felt emotion welling up in his chest. This piece had frustrated him for so long. He'd almost given up on it a dozen times. But he'd kept showing up, kept trying, and now finally he could play it. That night, the clip of him playing Clair de Lune got shared around. The next Tuesday, 300 people showed up to watch his practice. The Tuesday after that, 500 people started sending him messages. A woman in California said she'd bought a keyboard after watching his streams. She was 55 and had always wanted to learn piano. Watching him struggle and improve gave her the courage to try. A teenager from Ohio said he'd quit piano lessons last year because he felt like he wasn't progressing fast enough. Watching the streams made him realize that progress doesn't have to be fast. It just has to be consistent. A retired man from Florida said the streams had become part of his routine. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, he'd make a cup of tea and watch. It was peaceful, motivating, real. You're not just practicing piano, the girl told him one evening. You're showing people what dedication looks like, what real learning looks like, mistakes and all. He'd never thought about it that way. He was just a guy learning piano. But apparently that meant something to people. In a world full of highlight reels and perfection, watching someone genuinely struggle and grow was refreshing. The live streams changed his practice in subtle ways. He became more consistent, knowing people were expecting him. He pushed himself a bit harder, wanting to show progress. But he also became more honest about his struggles, talking through his frustrations, explaining what he was working on. Okay, this section right here, he'd say to the camera. This is where I always mess up. Watch, I'm going to mess it up right now. And he would. And then he'd try again, and again, until slowly, gradually, it got better. His daughter texted him one evening, Dad, my roommate's mom watches your piano streams. She recognized your hands from the video I showed her. She says you're famous now. Famous seemed like a huge exaggeration, but known? Maybe. He'd created something that resonated with people, not because he was excellent, but because he was authentic. One Thursday in late March, he started his stream and saw 1,000 people had joined within the first 5 minutes. 1,000 people, watching him practice piano in a community center. This is insane, he muttered. April brought warmer weather and something unexpected. The live streams had grown bigger than anyone anticipated. What started as 20 people watching had turned into regular audiences of over 1,000. Sometimes 2,000 on a good night. But something even more interesting started happening. People from the live stream began showing up in person. The first one came on a Tuesday evening in early April. A woman in her 60s walked in hesitantly, looking around the room like she wasn't sure she was in the right place. She was carrying a bag and looked nervous. The girl noticed her first. Can we help you? I'm looking for the piano practice sessions. The ones that stream online? His eyes widened. You came here? From where? About 2 hours away. I've been watching your streams for a month now. I wanted to see it in person. And well, I brought you something. She opened her bag and pulled out a thick book. This was my piano book when I was learning 40 years ago. I haven't touched a piano since I got married and had kids. Life got busy, but watching you made me remember how much I loved it. I'm starting again next week. I bought a keyboard, and I thought you might like this book. He took the book carefully. It was worn, pages yellowed with age, full of classical pieces, some simple, some advanced. Her name was written in faded ink on the inside cover. I can't take this. This is yours. It's full of memories, she smiled. Exactly. And now it'll make new memories. You've given me a gift by showing me it's not too late to start again. Let me give you this gift back. He didn't know what to say. This stranger had driven 2 hours just to give him a piano book and say thank you. The girl had to nudge him. That's really kind of you. Thank you. Really. The woman stayed for his whole practice session. She sat quietly, watching in person what she'd watched on her computer screen a dozen times. When he finished, she thanked him again and left. But she wasn't the last. The next Thursday, a young man in his 20s showed up. He'd driven from the city about 90 minutes away. He wanted to meet the person who'd inspired him to start learning piano again. He'd quit lessons as a teenager and always regretted it. The streams reminded him why he'd loved music in the first place. Then came a middle-aged woman who brought homemade cookies for everyone. An elderly man who just wanted to shake his hand. A teenager who brought her mother to show her what real learning looked like. By mid-April, it wasn't unusual to have 15 or 20 people in the room during practice sessions. Some were regulars from the neighborhood. Others had traveled from surrounding towns. All of them drawn by the live streams. All of them wanting to be part of this unexpected community. The girl had to help manage it. She'd greet people at the door, make sure everyone had a place to sit, and moderate the live stream comments. Mrs. Chen brought in extra chairs from the storage room. "This is not what I expected when you pressed that first key," Mrs. Chen said, shaking her head in amazement. One Tuesday evening, something remarkable happened. An older woman walked in, probably in her 80s, carrying a cane. She moved slowly but with purpose. Everyone got quiet when they saw her. "Are you the young man who plays piano?" she asked. He almost laughed at being called young. But compared to her, he supposed he was. "Yes, ma'am. That's me. I taught piano for 52 years. Retired now. My hands don't work so well anymore." She held up her hands, twisted with arthritis. "But I've been watching your streams." Every Tuesday and Thursday she walked closer to the piano. "You make a lot of mistakes," he nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "I know. But you don't give up. You play the same section 10 times if you need to. That's what good students do." "That's what I always tried to teach." She looked at him with sharp eyes. "Would you mind if an old teacher gave you some pointers?" "I would love that." Her name was Mrs. Rodriguez, and she became a regular. She couldn't play anymore, but she could teach. She'd sit next to the bench during his practice, offering gentle corrections. "Curve your fingers more. Relax your wrists. Feel the rhythm before you play it." The live stream viewers loved her. "Piano Grandma is in the house," they'd comment. "Mrs. Rodriguez is the best. Can we have Mrs. Rodriguez every session?" Having a real teacher, even informally, transformed his playing. She explained things the videos couldn't. She could see his bad habits and correct them immediately. She taught him proper technique that he'd been missing. "You have good instincts," she told him one evening. "You just needed guidance. In a year, maybe 2, you'll be quite good." Other people started contributing too. A man who'd played piano in college brought in a better bench, one that didn't wobble. Someone donated a space heater for the corner where the audience sat. A local business sent over folding chairs. The community center director noticed what was happening. She came by one Thursday to see for herself. 25 people packed into the piano room. Another 2,000 watching online. "Everyone quiet, respectful, supportive. This is incredible," she said. "You've brought life to this space. The piano was just collecting dust before you came." They talked about maybe having special events, maybe other music sessions. The community was clearly hungry for this kind of gathering. This authentic, unpolished, real connection. But he didn't want it to change too much. "I'm just here to practice," he said. "If people want to watch, that's great. But I don't want it to become a show. It needs to stay real." The director understood. "Keep doing exactly what you're doing. Real is what people need." His daughter came home for spring break in late April. She'd seen the live streams, of course, and his progress. But she wanted to see it in person. She came on a Thursday evening. Walked into a room filled with strangers who'd become a community. Saw her father at the piano, teaching himself a Chopin nocturne, making mistakes but persisting. Saw people cheering him on, both in person and in the live stream comments. After he finished practicing, she hugged him tight. "Dad, this is amazing. What you've built here. It's not just about piano, is it?" "No," he admitted. "It's about showing up. About trying even when you're not sure you can. About creating space for others to try too." She met Mrs. Rodriguez and the girl and Frank and George. She played with Beth's toddler, who still danced to the piano music. She saw how her father had transformed from a lonely divorced guy going through the motions into someone who had purpose, community, and impact. I'm really proud of you, Dad, not just for learning piano, for all of this. That night, lying in bed back at his apartment, he thought about how far he'd come. 7 months ago, he'd been lost, alone. Going through a divorce, his daughter away at college, his days blending into each other without meaning. Then one note, one Tuesday evening, one decision to try something new. That decision had rippled outward in ways he never imagined. The teenage girl had found a safe space. Frank and George had a place for their chess games. Beth and her son had somewhere warm and welcoming. Mrs. Rodriguez had found a purpose in her retirement. And thousands of people online had found inspiration and community, all because he'd been willing to be a beginner, to show his mistakes, to keep going even when it was hard. The next Tuesday, someone brought a professional camera to improve the stream quality. Someone else set up better lighting. The production value was getting better, but the core remained the same. Him a piano and honest practice. A local newspaper sent a reporter. They wanted to do a story about the viral piano practice sessions bringing community together. He agreed, but only if they emphasized that anyone could do this. Anyone could start learning something new. Anyone could create community by simply showing up consistently and being authentic. The article ran the following Sunday. His phone blew up with messages. Old friends from high school, former coworkers. His ex-wife even texted, saw the article. This is really great. Good for you, he responded simply. Thanks. Hope you're doing well, and he meant it. The bitterness from the divorce had faded. He'd found his own path forward. You can't move forward while clutching the past. You have to put your hands on new keys, try new notes, create new music. May arrived with flowers blooming and warmer evenings. The piano room had become something special. A gathering place. A learning space. A community hub. But it all still centered around those 2 evenings. Tuesday and Thursday, 7 o'clock. One man, learning piano, making mistakes, and showing everyone watching that transformation happen slowly. One practice session at a time. Mrs. Chen summed it up best one evening after everyone had left. You know what you did? You gave people permission. Permission for what? Permission to be beginners. Permission to make mistakes. Permission to try something new even when they're scared. That's a gift. He sat at the piano after she left, the room empty and quiet now. He played through Claire de Lune one more time. Not for the camera. Not for the audience. Just for himself. The notes floated through the empty room. Some perfect, some not quite right, but all of them his. All of them earned through hours of practice. Hours of showing up when he was tired. Hours of pushing through frustration. This was his transformation. From one note to full songs. From isolation to community. From going through the motions to having purpose. And it was still just beginning. Still unfolding. Still growing. The email arrived on a Wednesday morning in late May. He was sitting in his truck during lunch break, eating a sandwich and scrolling through messages. Most were spam or work-related, but one subject line caught his eye. Performance Opportunity, Community Voices Showcase. He opened it, expecting another scam or random invitation, but it was from the Riverside Concert Hall, a real venue downtown. A place where actual musicians performed. The email explained that they hosted an annual Community Voices Showcase. It featured regular people sharing their talents and stories. Past showcases had included a retired firefighter who wrote poetry, a teacher who painted, a nurse who sang jazz. They wanted to know if he'd be interested in performing a short piano set. His first reaction was to laugh out loud. Him perform? On a real stage? That was ridiculous. He'd been playing for 8 months. He was still a beginner. Sure, he could play several pieces now. Sure, thousands of people watched his practice sessions online. But performing was different. That meant being judged. That meant having to be good. He deleted the email, but he couldn't stop thinking about it. That evening at the job site, while he was measuring lumber, the email kept creeping back into his mind. At dinner, eating leftover pizza alone at his kitchen table, he thought about it again. Finally, he called his daughter. Dad, what's up? You usually text. I got this weird email today. He explained the invitation. She was quiet for a moment. Are you going to do it? No, absolutely not. I'm not good enough. Dad, that's not true. I've watched your streams. You're really good now, way better than when you started. But this is different. This is a real performance, in front of real people. What if I mess up? You mess up all the time on the live streams and nobody cares. They actually like seeing the real process. This feels too big, too scary, his daughter sighed. Remember what you told me when I was nervous about going to college? You said that scary things are usually the things most worth doing. He'd forgotten he'd said that. Funny how your own advice sounds different when it's directed back at you. Think about it at least, she said. Don't say no just because you're scared. He promised he'd think about it. But he was pretty sure the answer would still be no. Thursday evening came. His regular practice session. The room filled up with the usual crowd. About 30 people in person now, plus 2,000 online. Mrs. Rodriguez was there, ready to offer her gentle guidance. Frank and George set up their chess game. The girl had the live stream running smoothly. He practiced like always. He was working on a piece by Ludovico Einaudi, something modern and beautiful. It was challenging, but in a good way. The kind of challenge that made him better. During a break, while he was stretching his hands, the girl asked, "You seem distracted today. What's up?" He told her about the email, about the invitation to perform. Her eyes got huge. "That's incredible. You have to do it." "I don't have to do anything." "And I'm not going to." "It's too much," Mrs. Rodriguez overheard. "Someone invited you to perform?" "Yes, but I'm not good enough." "I'd embarrass myself." The old teacher looked at him with those sharp eyes. "Let me tell you something. I taught piano for 52 years. You know what stopped most of my students from achieving their potential? Not lack of talent, not lack of practice, fear. Fear of not being perfect. Fear of judgment. Fear of trying something difficult. But what if I mess up? You will mess up. That's guaranteed. The question is, are you brave enough to mess up in front of people?" Frank chimed in from his chess game. "I've been playing chess for 60 years. Still mess up constantly. Still play anyway," George nodded. "Life's too short to only do things you've already mastered. Try the scary stuff." The live stream chat had caught wind of the conversation. Comments started flooding in. "Do it. We'll all be watching. You inspire us by trying new things. Now inspire us by being brave. If you can start piano at your age, you can do a performance." The girl showed him the comments. Hundreds of messages encouraging him. People he'd never met, rooting for him to take this chance. "I don't know," he said quietly. The girl sat down next to him. "You know what you told me? Back in November when I was hiding in the corner and you asked me to try playing, you said this place is for everyone, that trying is more important than being perfect. You need to take your own advice." She was right. He knew she was right, but still. A real performance. On a real stage. It felt enormous. He went home that night and opened the deleted email. He'd moved it to trash but hadn't emptied the trash yet. He read it again carefully. The performance would be in 3 weeks. June 15th, a Friday evening. He'd have a 10-minute slot. He could play whatever he wanted. The venue seated 500 people. 500 people. His stomach flipped just thinking about it. He spent the weekend wrestling with the decision. Saturday morning, he almost replied to say no thanks. Saturday afternoon, he almost replied to say yes. By Saturday evening, he'd changed his mind 4 more times. Sunday, he went to the community center, even though it wasn't his practice day. He needed to sit at the piano, to feel the keys under his fingers, to remember why he started this journey in the first place. The building was quiet. No one else around. Just him and the piano like that first Tuesday evening 8 months ago. He played through his pieces. The easy ones he'd learned first. The harder ones he'd worked on for weeks. He played for over 2 hours, losing himself in the music. When he finished, he knew his answer. He sent the email on Monday morning. "I would be honored to participate in the Community Voices Showcase." The reply came within an hour. They were thrilled. They sent him details. What time to arrive, where to park, technical specifications for the piano they'd provide, a form to list what pieces he'd be playing. He sat staring at the form. What pieces? He could play quite a few now. But which ones were good enough for a performance? That Tuesday, he told everyone about his decision. The room erupted in applause and cheers. The live stream chat exploded with excitement. "Now we really need to work," Mrs. Rodriguez said. 3 weeks to prepare. We can do it. She helped him choose his pieces. 3 songs totaling about 10 minutes. They'd start with something he was confident in, Für Elise. Then a modern piece, the Einaudi he'd been working on. Finally, Claire de Lune, the piece that had challenged him for so long but now felt like an old friend. The next 3 weeks were intensive. He practiced every day, not just Tuesday and Thursday. He'd come home from work, eat quickly, and practice for 2 hours. Mrs. Rodriguez came to extra sessions to coach him. The girl helped him record and review his practice so he could catch mistakes. The livestream audiences grew even more. People were invested now. They wanted him to succeed. They offered encouragement and advice. A few professional pianists who'd been watching even sent detailed tips for performance anxiety. Remember to breathe between pieces. If you make a mistake, keep going. Don't stop or react. Look at the keys, not the audience. You've got this. We believe in you. His daughter announced she was coming home for the weekend. I'm not missing this, Dad. I'm bringing 3 friends from college, too. His ex-wife texted again. Heard you're performing. That's really brave. Good luck. Even his work crew found out. His foreman said, we're closing the job site early that Friday. We're all coming to watch. The pressure built. What had he gotten himself into? 500 seats. His daughter would be there. His work crew. Mrs. Rodriguez and all the regulars, plus whoever else showed up, plus the live stream audience that might be in the thousands. 1 week before the performance, his hands started shaking during practice. Not from effort, but from nerves. He messed up parts he usually nailed. His timing went off. Everything felt wrong. Stop, Mrs. Rodriguez said firmly. You're in your head. Come here. She had him sit in a chair. Close your eyes. Why did you start playing piano? Because I was lonely. Because I needed something new. And what did you find? Community, purpose, growth, exactly. This performance isn't about being perfect. It's about sharing your journey. About showing people what happens when you try something new, when you show up consistently, when you don't give up. She squeezed his shoulder. You're not performing to impress judges. You're sharing your story through music. That's all. Her words helped. He refocused. The last week of practice went better. The night before the performance, he couldn't sleep. He lay in bed running through the pieces in his mind. His fingers twitched against the blanket, playing imaginary keys. This was really happening. Tomorrow night, he'd walk onto a stage, sit at a grand piano, play in front of hundreds of people. The scared part of his brain screamed at him to cancel, to make up an excuse, to run away. But another part, the part that had pressed that first key 8 months ago, said something different. You've already done the hard part. You've already changed your life. This is just one more step. He got out of bed at 2 a.m. and made himself some tea. He sat at his kitchen table looking at his hands. These rough, calloused hands that had built houses and now made music. They were shaking slightly. You can do this, he whispered to himself. You've been doing it all along. Friday arrived. He took the day off work. He tried to relax but couldn't. He watched television without seeing it. He ate lunch without tasting it. He practiced one more time in the afternoon, just to keep his fingers loose. The morning after the performance, he woke up to his phone buzzing nonstop. Messages, comments, emails. The video of his performance had been shared thousands of times overnight. People he hadn't talked to in years were reaching out. But more importantly, people were sharing their own stories. A woman in Texas bought a violin. A man in Oregon signed up for pottery classes. A teenager in Maine started learning photography. All of them saying the same thing. If you can start piano at your age, I can start this. He'd become accidentally famous for being a beginner, for showing that transformation doesn't require perfection. It just requires persistence. The local news wanted to interview him. The community center asked if he'd be interested in teaching beginner classes. A music store offered to sponsor his continued learning. Everyone wanted a piece of what he'd created. It was overwhelming. All he'd wanted was to learn piano, to fill the silence, to try something new. But sitting at his kitchen table that Saturday morning, scrolling through hundreds of messages, he realized something important. His journey had never really been just about him. From the moment the teenage girl had sat in that corner listening to his terrible playing, it had been about more than just learning piano. It had been about showing up authentically, about being vulnerable, about proving that growth happens in public, not just in private, that you don't have to be good at something to start doing it. His phone rang. His daughter. Dad, have you seen how many people are talking about your performance? I'm looking at it now. It's crazy. It's not crazy. It's beautiful. You change people's lives by changing your own. They talked for a while. She told him about her friends' reactions, how inspired they felt, how they were rethinking their own fears and hesitations about trying new things. You know what I realized watching you last night? She said. You didn't just learn piano. You learned how to be brave again. That hit him hard. She was right. The divorce had broken something in him, made him smaller, made him afraid to want things, to try things, to hope for things. But learning piano had rebuilt that. Note by note, practice by practice, mistake by mistake, Tuesday evening arrived. His regular practice time. He drove to the community center wondering if things would be different now. If the performance had changed everything. When he walked into the piano room, he got his answer. It was packed. At least 50 people in person. The teenage girl was there setting up the live stream. Mrs. Rodriguez sat in her usual spot. Frank and George had their chessboard ready. But there were also dozens of new faces, people who'd been at the performance, people who'd watched online and wanted to see the practice sessions in person. I hope you don't mind, the girl said, gesturing to the crowd. Word got out about tonight's practice. He looked around at all these people. They'd come to watch him practice, not perform. Practice with all the mistakes and repetition that came with it. I don't mind at all, he said. But I'm just going to practice like always. Same mistakes, same struggles. That's what we're here for, someone called out. We want to see the real work. He sat down at the piano. The live stream showed 15,000 people watching. 15,000 people wanted to watch him practice. It was surreal, but also familiar. This was what he did. Tuesday and Thursday, 7 o'clock practice. He started with his scales, just like always. Then moved into the pieces he was working on. He was learning something new now, a piece by Chopin. It was hard. He messed up constantly. Started over, messed up again. The room was silent except for the piano. 50 people watching him struggle with the same two measures over and over. Finally, on the 10th try, he got through it. Small victory, the room erupted in applause. And see, Mrs. Rodriguez said, this is what learning looks like. 10 tries to get it once, then 10 more times to make it consistent. But you don't give up. He practiced for his usual hour and a half. At the end, people came up to talk. So many stories. So many people inspired to start their own journeys. A woman in her 50s said, I'm signing up for painting classes. I've wanted to paint for 30 years. You made me realize I can't wait anymore. A man in his 60s said, I'm learning Italian, flying to Italy next year. Life's too short to keep saying someday. A young guy in his 20s said, I dropped out of college because I was afraid of failing. Watching you fail over and over and keep going made me realize failure is part of learning. I'm re-enrolling next semester. These weren't just nice words. These were real decisions, real changes. His journey had sparked something in people. The weeks that followed settled into a new rhythm. The crowds at practice sessions remained large. The live stream numbers stayed high, but the core stayed the same. Him, the piano, honest practice. He did start teaching a beginner class at the community center on Saturday mornings. Just basics. How to find middle C, how to place your hands, simple songs. The first class had 30 people ranging from teenagers to retirees. Remember, he told them, 8 months ago I couldn't play a single note. If I can learn, anyone can. You just have to show up. His relationship with his daughter deepened. She came home more often, wanting to be part of what he'd built. She started helping the teenage girl with the social media and live stream management. 2 young women, a generation apart, both changed by piano music and community. His ex-wife reached out again. They met for coffee one afternoon. It was the first time they'd talked face-to-face since the divorce. You seem different, she said. Happier. More like yourself. I am happier. Found something that's mine. They talked for an hour, not about the past, about the present. About what they'd both learned. About how sometimes people grow apart and that's okay. About how endings can lead to new beginnings. It wasn't a reconciliation. They weren't getting back together. But it was closure. Peaceful closure. 2 people who'd loved each other once, acknowledging that life had taken them different directions. I'm glad you found your music, she said as they parted. Really glad. The community center became known for the piano sessions. The local paper did a follow-up article about how one man's hobby had revitalized community engagement. Other people started using the space for their own learning projects. A book club formed, a sketching group, a language exchange, all of it sparked by someone deciding to learn piano, by someone being brave enough to be bad at something in public. One Thursday evening in late July, almost 10 months since he'd started, something special happened. He was practicing a new piece, something challenging and beautiful. His fingers moved across the keys with a fluidity he'd never had before. Mrs. Rodriguez was watching closely. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "You're not a beginner anymore," she said. He looked at her, surprised. "What do you mean?" "You've crossed over. You're not an advanced player, not yet. But you're not a beginner either. You're an intermediate pianist now. The foundation is solid. Now comes the fun part. Really making music." It hit him emotionally. He wasn't a beginner anymore. 10 months of consistent practice had actually made him a real pianist. Not a professional, not a master, but real. The live stream chat exploded with celebration. "We've watched this whole journey. From one note to this. This is what dedication looks like." That night, driving home, he thought about everything that had changed. 10 months ago, he'd been a divorced, lonely guy in his 40s, going through the motions. Existing, but not really living. Now he was someone who played piano, who taught others, who'd created a community, who'd inspired thousands of people to take their own leaps. His apartment didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like a place he returned to after a full day. After meaningful work, meaningful practice, meaningful connections, he'd reconnected with his daughter on a deeper level, made peace with his ex-wife, found friends across generations, discovered purpose, all from one note, one Tuesday evening. One moment of courage when he'd decided to try something new instead of going home to an empty apartment. The transformation wasn't just in his playing. It was in his entire life. He'd transformed from someone going through a painful chapter into someone writing a new story. Tuesday and Thursday still remained sacred. 7 o'clock. The piano. But now it was more than practice. It was ritual. It was community. It was proof that showing up consistently changes everything. He continued learning new pieces, continued making mistakes, continued growing, because that's what transformation is. Not a destination, not a moment where you arrive and stop, but a continuous journey of becoming. The teenage girl graduated high school that spring. She'd been accepted to a good college. She credited her time at the community center, watching someone pursue a goal consistently with helping her focus on her own dreams. "You showed me what dedication looks like," she told him, "not just with piano, with life." Frank and George kept playing their chess games, still arguing about moves, still laughing at old jokes. The piano music had become the soundtrack to their friendship. Beth's son, now 3, still danced when he played. Some things didn't change, and that was good. Mrs. Rodriguez, now in her 80s, still came when she could, still offered gentle corrections, still reminded him that good technique mattered even when you weren't performing. New people cycled through. Some stayed, some moved on. But the core remained. A community built around growth, learning, and showing up.